What's going on, everybody? Sooner Nation Podcast. He's Rich. I'm Matt. Back with you for the third week in a row. Am I leaning too far into the microphone?
No, not at all. I just feel like I'm going to have to yell to compete with you.
No, I don't think so. It's a good microphone. Let me tilt it towards you a little bit.
Microphone check.
Stop. So since last week, Baker Mayfield has not been named the starting quarterback in Cleveland. That was one of our big debates. The Browns decided to go with Tyrod Taylor, which, I'm not one of those hate to say I told you so type of guys, but I hate to say I told you so. And I agree with that move. I feel like that's the best move for Baker, and I feel like that's the best move for Cleveland. I don't know that we need to get back into that unless you want to, because it's a done deal.
I don't know that we need to get back into it as much as there is.
You just want to tell me I'm right.
No, yeah, you are right. You did call it last week. I absolutely will give you that point in this conversation. But I do look at it as Deshaun Watson, and we knew that coming into the Houston Texans situation, he was the most talented quarterback on the roster. We saw what happened with him. So now the question becomes, with Tyrod Taylor being named the starter this early on, I don't disagree with the move. I'm not going to argue against that move, but I'm wondering how long it lasts.
Okay,
that's where we're moving with that question.
Here's what everybody wants to bring up: Deshaun Watson, Deshaun Watson's a great story, and he's clearly the best quarterback on the roster, and that may actually end up being Baker's story. But I think there's more Brett Favre's, Aaron Rodgers type guys out there, success stories, than there are Deshaun Watson's. I mean, Brett Favre was. Do you even know who drafted Brett Favre?
I don't.
Brett Favre was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, came to Green Bay in a trade.
I don't even know who Brett Favre is.
Whatever. Okay. And then Aaron Rodgers coming out of Cal, he sat behind Brett Favre. I think there's more stories out there along those lines than there are of the guys thrown in the fire, because you can find a bunch of stories of rookies that were thrown into the fire and they just had it all fall down on them. And so that could be something that I don't know. I just feel like we kind of hit the ins and outs of this a whole lot last week. I don't want to hit the ins and outs of it again this week, other than to say I support the move. It's what I talked about. It's what I called, and I think I'm not saying he won't play at all in 2019 or 2018. What year is this? I'm not saying he won't play at all, but what I am saying is I think he'll play very little. Tyrod Taylor, everyone's talking about like Tyrod Taylor's a trash quarterback, and he's not.
He's not. You don't play 8 years in the NFL and be a trash quarterback. It's different if he gets into a situation where it's like a Kyle Singler in the NBA, but it's not. This is a guy who Cleveland went and sought him out, essentially. They picked him up. It wasn't as if they had no other options. They knew where they were in the draft. They knew what was going to be available in this draft, and they still chose to pick up a guy like Tyrod Taylor, obviously naming him the starter come fall, but there were options for them there. It wasn't as if it was a last-ditch effort, and Tyrod Taylor was that guy.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about quarterbacks here in just a little bit, but we're moving back to college. I want to say hi to Marcus Smith. I know I said hi to you in the chat, but what up, Marcus? Coach Smith joining us on Facebook Live. We're at Facebook Live. We are going to be redone on the podcast at TalkShoe, YouTube, as well as heartland-sports.com, our website. And however you catch us, thanks for participating. Feel free to jump in with your comments by Twitter, by text, or on the Facebook, or just leaving your comments as you check us out later on. So last week, at the very end of the podcast, Joshua Hansen asked me a question. He said that he never really got to hear my thoughts on the Rose Bowl, and Joshua was right on that, because I left the country. We've talked about my new job and the changes that's going on with me, and I spend more of my time out of the United States than I do in the United States. And we're trying to figure out a way to keep the podcast going even with that, which unfortunately, Rich, means that I'm probably going to have to fly solo for a while, because unless you're going to come to Columbia
Buy my plane ticket.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll get up. We'll make it happen.
So we're going to try to figure out something to make this podcast a little more consistent than what it is. That said, I never really had the opportunity to jump on and to share my thoughts outside of what we posted on the website. And really, it comes down for me. I hate to go back 4 months and relive some bad memories for Oklahoma fans, including myself. By the way, I will tell you this: I watched that game in Spanish, and
hey, that's like my NFL Super Bowl experience.
Yeah, that was an exciting game as it was, but to hear it in Spanish, because everything's more exciting in Spanish. I mean, with all respect to the English language, Spanish is a lot more of an exciting language, and it's like, it's if you don't speak Spanish, it sounds like this. It sounds gibberish. It's blah, 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 Baker Mayfield, blah, 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 touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. I mean, it's just kind of fun, and there was a lot of touchdowns there. Unfortunately, there was one more for Georgia than there was for Oklahoma. And at the end of the day, here, to me, this loss came down to two factors. Two key factors, one of them a minor factor and one of them a major factor. The minor factor, honestly, was Baker Mayfield's health. A lot of people forget, because it was such an emotional game, emotional win, a lot of people forget the fact that Baker Mayfield was sick leading up to that game. I mean, he is down with the flu, limited practice participant, and a guy like Baker doesn't need to practice. He's good with the X's and O's. He's a high IQ quarterback is what they say. But the reality is, the flip side of that is the physical toll it takes on your body. Anybody who's ever coached any level of athletics, of competitive athletics, and certainly anybody who's ever played any level of competitive athletics, particularly at the higher levels, you know what taking a week off does to your body, much less taking a week off because you're sick, and I'm assuming losing bodily fluids due to that illness. I feel like that played a factor. You look at Baker Mayfield in the first half as opposed to Baker Mayfield in the second half, and that's a you can't say there wasn't fatigue involved in that, and we've never really seen that as an issue with Baker throughout his career at the University of Oklahoma. But to me, the bigger issue was not the illness of Baker Mayfield, but the bigger issue to me was, for the very first time in his very young coaching career, I felt like the moment was bigger than Lincoln Riley. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does for me.
I mean, I feel like it was a big moment. And Kirby Smart's been around the block a little bit more than Lincoln Riley has.
Well,
go ahead.
Just on Kirby Smart, I do think you make a good point in that we oftentimes, throughout the duration of that season, forget that Lincoln Riley's in his first year as a head coach at a major program. Kirby Smart, it's not much different. His situation isn't, let's be honest. But he had been to the college football playoff. Kirby Smart had actually won it. He knew what it took preparation-wise, and Kirby Smart's a defensive guy. So we're comparing Smart, who's a defensive mind, to Lincoln Riley, who's an offensive mind.
No, for sure. And I think, and I'm not, you got to be careful, because you Oklahoma fans will drop us on Twitter for anything. And I'm
super bitter about that.
I'm still on that thing.
Raise your hand if you're bitter.
This guy right here. But you got to be careful with it. But the truth is that moment was bigger than Lincoln Riley. He is a good coach. He's a great coach. As a fan of the team, I'm excited. Here's what a lot of people don't understand about us, and it would be a long shot for us to get credentials, but we could have a chance. I mean, we're credentialed for Oklahoma athletics. We were in the press box just last Saturday. We're in the press box for Oklahoma baseball. Then we went across the street and sat right behind home plate for Oklahoma softball in the final in the Bedlam game because we're credentialed. I've never even applied for credentials for football because I sit in the stands. I have season tickets. I go and I sit in the stands. I would much rather be in the stands than in the press box for a football game because I'm a fan first when it comes to Oklahoma football. I've never denied that. We try to be unbiased when we write. We try to be unbiased when we record. But that said, this was a moment for Lincoln Riley that he caved. His inexperience showed. And it's little things. I felt like, to me, the game changer was the onside kick, or not the onside kick, but the squib kick right before the half. That allowed Georgia to go into the locker room with momentum, where it would have been vice versa. Well, Oklahoma outscored Georgia 14-7 in the first quarter, and it was 17-7 in the second quarter until they set them up for that field goal. It was a long field goal, and Georgia goes in on a high note instead of Oklahoma going in on a high. Just little things like that. And then you get into the second half, and with some of the play calling, there was just times where you thought, okay, you're relying, Jimmy Johnson, I was not a fan of Jimmy Johnson. I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I hated the fact that Jimmy Johnson went to the Miami Dolphins. But I remember his stance with Dan Marino. He talked about going to the candy store. And he said, you don't want to go to the candy store too often, talking about Dan Marino being an aging quarterback. Well, Baker Mayfield's not an aging quarterback, but I feel like Lincoln Riley went to the candy store too often, and then he didn't go enough. And I just feel like he tried to get too tricky in the second half, where he just needed to line up and play football. And to me, that's what it came down to. It doesn't take away from Georgia's win over Oklahoma, because they beat the Sooners. We could get into Mike Stoops. We can get into that defense if you want to. Clearly, everybody knows the Achilles heel with this team was defense. I don't know it's schematics as much as it is personnel, but at the end of the day, the coaches are responsible for personnel, right? Because you recruit those guys, you evaluate those guys, you coach those guys, you prepare those guys, and you put those guys on the field. But Mike Stoops is still the defensive coordinator of this team. But if you score 48 points, you should win a football game. That's always been my stance.
That's true. I know the general consensus here is that you don't have to score 48 to win a game. We've talked about 31.
In the Big 12 you do.
31, 35 being a score that should provide you with a win. I agree with you on the fact that was where the game changed there just before the half. But I also felt like Georgia made really good adjustments.
Right.
And Oklahoma wasn't able to adapt to those adjustments. Let's talk about just the third quarter, because Georgia came out, and instead of it being the Jake Fromm show, instead of them asking him to do more than maybe what he's capable of as a freshman in that moment, they go to their experienced running back group, potentially at that point in time the deepest running back unit in the country. And what happens? Nick Chubb rattles off that 50-yard run. Then you have Sony Michel doing a 38-yard run on his own.
Well, Michel had a 75-yard run earlier in the game.
He did, but I'm saying in the third quarter.
Right, I feel you.
They went to that strength, and they rode those two guys. That was the only two scores of the game. And Oklahoma this is my opinion, and you
mean
can
the only
dig
two scores of
into
the third quarter?
Yes.
Right.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
You can dig deeper on that and say whatever you would like to afterwards, but for me it was Georgia making those adjustments in the second half and Oklahoma's defense just being exposed.
Yeah, I agree. I think with respect to our man Joshua Hansen, we don't want to relive this a whole bunch, but it's worth pointing out that this was a good team, but it was a flawed team. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And the flaws were an inexperienced head coach and a defense that struggled. And now the good news of that, good news, bad news situation is you've got a coach who's very composed and learns from his mistakes and is going into his second season as a head coach now. But the flip side of that is, I don't know about the defense. I don't know if you can say this defense is better. Mm-hmm. The good news is they've got new personnel. The bad news is they got some of the same personnel coming back. And you've got to mesh those, and you're never going to learn about that in the spring game. You're not going to learn about that in August. You're not even going to learn about that September 1st.
Right. The big question I have is who's going to be that key pass rusher? Because we're losing the two guys off the edge, DJ Ward. You're losing Okoronkwo. Who's going to step up and be that main pass rusher? The guy who has that motor, who never quits, and the one thing that he wants to put on a resume is the sack of a quarterback. Who's going to step up and who's going to do that? Because I feel like we can be pretty set in the defensive backs. We can be pretty set in the secondary. We've got some experience at linebacker. We've got some speed at linebacker as well. But for me, it comes down to that, especially playing in the Big 12. And that's the biggest question I have.
Yeah, and again, those are questions that we're not going to have answers to. You can look at that roster, you can look at that depth chart, and you can say, I expect this guy, I expect that guy. Oklahoma, I feel like on the defensive line, with what they lost, even with losing a guy like Obo, I like the move of Kenneth Mann. I mean, I like what he's doing. I like having him at defensive end. He's not going to be the jack linebacker that Obo was, but they're talking about Mark Jackson there. And if your last name's Jackson, shouldn't you play the jack linebacker? I'm just saying, there's guys there. I think what they're going to do with Caleb Kelly, they're going to put him in more of a natural position for him,
which is good.
I think Caleb Kelly's going to have just an incredible, he's going to have a career year. I believe that. But I don't know. I don't know about Robert Barnes. I like what I saw of him. I don't know what we're going to get out of the cornerbacks. Is it going to be Trey Norwood and Trey Brown? Is it going to be Parnell Motley? Who's going to play in there? There's just so much that you don't know. Inside the line, I like Marquise Overton. You hear good things about Bledsoe, but I think Gallimore's more of a natural guy in there. We're going so far down the train tracks with this thing that I expected us to. But the point is, Joshua Hansen, I hope I answered your question. And I hope for right now, it's the last time we have to relive that memory. I want to move on, and we're going to totally change sports here for just a second. Again, hi to everyone who's with us right now, Facebook Live. I want to change directions and go to the NBA for a second, because I have some thoughts here, and you have some thoughts, and I don't know that either one of us are alone in our thoughts, but maybe because of the volatility of some fans, and we're not talking about the Oklahoma fans anymore. You guys are off the hook. The volatility of some fans, we're maybe afraid to voice those thoughts, but you have some specific thoughts.
I'm not afraid to voice my thoughts.
Oh, you're not? Okay. Well, you have some specific thoughts on Russell Westbrook.
Yeah,
and I want to start out. I want to introduce this by saying there was Zach Lowe, not our Zach Lowe, but the other Zach Lowe, who's less popular than the Thunder guys. Zach Lowe, the Zach Lowe that covers the NBA, pointed out that he's hearing just some chatter that people's recommendations, other front offices, are that the Thunder need to trade Russell Westbrook and kind of, not his words but my words, kind of burn it down and rebuild it. I know you have some thoughts on Russell, but I want to premise this by saying that is the worst thing ever. That's the worst idea that you can come up with, and I'm going to explain why after you share your thoughts on Russ.
I don't think that's the worst plan ever. Here's the reality for me is, I've shared this with you. I don't know if I've shared this with everybody else, but the Thunder are not my favorite team when it comes to the NBA. That's not by virtue of anything that they have done or any player that they have picked up or coach for that matter. It's by virtue of, before there was a Thunder, there were all these other teams to choose from. Needless to say, when I'm looking at the Oklahoma City Thunder, one thing that you and I mentioned last week was this consistent inclusion of the name Paul George. And the flip side of that is the exclusion of the name Carmelo Anthony. What we've begun to discover, Carmelo Anthony isn't happy in Oklahoma City. Paul George has said there are certain boxes that need to be checked off in order for him to stay. Regardless of where you fall on Paul George staying or leaving, everybody wants him here. Everybody who's a fan of the Thunder want Carmelo to stay. Everyone who's not Carmelo.
I was like, okay.
Paul George to stay. Everybody who's in
because
upper
they
management,
want those 5 points and 6 turnovers in that elimination game. That's
everybody
why they
who's in the management of the franchise, they want Paul George to stay. I can't say that for Carmelo Anthony, but when it comes down to Russell Westbrook, which was our subject matter, Russell Westbrook for me personally, is not a if you had to put a label of a number 1 guy and a number 2 guy, Russell Westbrook is not a number 1 for me.
You mean when you say
Russell
when you say
Westbrook,
he's not a number 1, you're saying he's not a go-to team leader guy,
right?
And you think Paul George is?
I don't know that. I'm not advocating for Paul George at this point in time. What I'm saying is that I don't see Russell Westbrook being that number 1 guy. I don't see him being the vocal leader that he needs to be. I don't see the leadership attitude that he needs to display at all points in time. And I don't see the guys around Russell Westbrook getting infinitely better than they were without him on the court. Needless to say, when I look at a guy like Russell Westbrook, I would tend to agree with these murmurs of maybe Oklahoma City should put him on the market just to see what they can get. Because if you're wanting a number 1 guy, I'm not even saying that was Kevin Durant while he was here. He tried to be that, but I think that's why he's a better fit at a place like Golden State, because he doesn't have to be that. And he's not going to be that. There are very few players in the NBA who are that type of leader, who are that type of player. And the most obvious of those is LeBron James, because everywhere he goes, they win. You can say the same for a guy like Kobe Bryant when he was playing in league, because where Kobe was, regardless of who was around him, they won. I would say the same about a guy like Tim Duncan, but he had a huge help in Greg Popovich. Russell Westbrook doesn't have a Popovich on the sideline to advocate for him and to really pull guys in and surround Russell Westbrook with the types of personalities that are manageable.
I mean, I'm going to disagree on so many different levels with you. And I'm not a Thunder fan, but I do feel like first of all, it's not fair to compare Russell Westbrook to LeBron James. I think one thing that we've learned, if this wasn't in your head already, you've learned by watching these playoffs. LeBron James is the best basketball player in the world right now. I'm not ready to elevate him above Michael Jordan, but he is on that level. And those are those rare guys. They're those guys that are, you get one a generation. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And he's that guy. I do think it is a good comparison to Kobe Bryant, though, because Kobe Bryant needed somebody with him. He was only in LA.
Did he though?
He did.
Who was with him for the most recent championship that Kobe Bryant won? And if you say Pau Gasol, I'm gonna smack you.
Well, I'm trying to think. That was. You're gonna make me. They beat Boston. What year was it? See, we need one of our guys who knows more can remember those rosters, to bring that up.
Here's the problem. Is
I'm gonna go to
everyone brought that argument when Shaq came along. But Kobe Bryant was still pretty young in his career at that point in time. Kobe Bryant won his... I know Pau Gasol was on that roster. I know, I believe Derek Fisher was on that roster. But those, to me, are more so role guys.
But that's what he needs. I mean, I see... I mean, the Shaq thing I think is legit. But I do think you need those role guys. And that's... Here's what First of all, let me say, this is why trading Russell Westbrook is a terrible idea. Because Russell Westbrook is all that you have. He's the only... If you're front-end management... If you're the fan in the stands, if you're the guy who cleans Chesapeake Energy Arena after the games, the only thing you know is that I guaranteed I have Russell Westbrook next year and the year after and the year after until that contract is over. That's all you have. There's no guarantee. You don't want Carmelo back. I think that cat's out of the bag. There's no guarantee you're getting Paul George back, and it looks like it's more of a 70 to 30% chance that Paul George is leaving. Only the staunchest, hardcore Thunder fans are clinging to more hope Paul George is staying than the reality that he's leaving. But even that guy, what he knows is that Russell Westbrook is back. That's all you know. That's the only guarantee. You have no guarantee that Jeremy Grant's coming back. You have no guarantee that, you got some of these other guys. Abranes is about to be an unrestricted free agent. Raymond Felton's on the market. You don't know anything other than Russell's coming back. If you get rid of Russell, what do you know at that point? Nothing. And if I'm Sam Presti, I'm saying I got no guarantees. I got nothing. Here's what I do know. I know if Russell Westbrook comes back, he's good enough on his own to get me into the playoffs. And you know what that does? That sells tickets.
And you know what that does? Get you out in the first round again.
It didn't matter. I mean, it didn't matter just...
So is it worth it for 2 extra games?
Yes.
2 extra games.
It's not just 2 extra games. It's the entire season of people paying money
I see what you're
to
saying.
come see Russell Westbrook.
I see what you're saying.
And if you don't have that, and you're going to build to the draft, which Sam Presti, I have mixed thoughts on this because Sam Presti has hit some home runs to the draft. He drafted Kevin Durant while they were still in Seattle. He drafted Russell Westbrook. He drafted James Harden. He's had some home runs in the draft, but he's also had some duds in the draft. And I feel like he has maybe had more duds than he's had the home runs. But like any power hitter, strikes out more often than they hit home runs. But people remember those home runs. But if you go that way and you try to build to the draft, hey, people will be excited about. Hey, we got Trae Young. I'm just throwing out a local name, right? That's your rookie. People are excited about the rookie. But you know what? No one's driving from Dallas to Oklahoma City to see Trae Young as a rookie. They'll drive from Dallas to Oklahoma City to see Russell Westbrook. They'll come from San Antonio. They'll drive in from the West Coast. I don't know how many games you've been to, but just about every game I've been to for the Oklahoma City Thunder, I've seen at least 1 or 2 people wearing the other team's jersey. Maybe some of those are local people. They're supporting their team, but they live here, but they're in the military or whatever. They're transplanted here. But they're coming. They're buying that ticket because they want to see their team play against Russell Westbrook. You lose that guarantee. Here's what Russell has never really had, in my opinion. He had James Harden. He had Kevin Durant. And that got him into the NBA Finals. He had Paul George. He had Carmelo Anthony. And that got him first-round exit this season. He's never had those quality, grind moment role players where he ran the show. I think, I disagree when you said he's not that guy. I think he needs to be that guy. And when he has to share that guy role, that's where he fails. Russell Westbrook, he needs to be that guy who moves on and does the show on his own.
Are you on live? Are you getting these questions, comments?
Oh, I'm looking at.
Help me out here.
I'm looking. Sorry, we'll get there. Hey, what's up, Scott? That's my man, Wichita, Kansas. I agree. We'll get to those here. Man, Scott's just blowing us up right now. But here's the point I'm making. Here's what Russell needs. Russell needs a physical guy inside, a rebounder. He doesn't have to have a guy like Joel Embiid who's a multi-scorer inside. He needs that guy who can be physical and rebound. He can crash the boards. Steven Adams, he may be that guy. He's improved from last year to this year, but what I think Steven Adams misses out on is he still gets pushed around inside. It took him too long to adjust in this Utah series to Rudy Gobert. Look what's happening with Clint Capella and Rudy Gobert in this Houston series. Clint Capella's bowing up to Rudy Gobert and taking it to him with physicality. Steven Adams needs to be that guy. If not, that's who you need to get rid of and get somebody who's there. You need another sharpshooter. Who's the sharpshooter on this team?
You don't really have one. It was supposed to be Carmelo Anthony.
Right. But you got to have that sharpshooter. I mean, a Raymond Felton guy, he's not really that guy. He can be, but you don't want a guy like Raymond Felton to be your sharpshooter. And you know what else you need? You need a good one. And I think Raymond Felton could be that. What if you played Raymond at the 1, you moved Russ to the 2? He's still not the sharpshooter, but you had
that's the best idea you've ever laid out on this show, because Russ is a natural 2. If you want to go back to his college days, if you want to look at UCLA, Russell Westbrook is a shooting guard. He's not a natural 1. And I get the trends. I see them in the NBA. There are more scoring point guards in the NBA than we've ever had in the history of basketball. The natural 2 is what he plays. I think he would excel at it. I just don't ever think it'll happen.
All right, so there. I feel like there's a recipe of success for Russell
That's not the issue for me. It's not who you can surround him with. Is Russell going to be that vocal? Is he going to have
you cannot
mentality and mindset?
Time
and will
out.
his attitude
Time
be
out.
that of a leader?
I'm giving you the timeout button. You cannot say Russell Westbrook isn't vocal. There's no way you can say he's not vocal. If you've watched any bit of Thunder basketball, sorry to say football, if you watch any bit of Thunder basketball, the guy's too vocal. He talks too much. He needs to shut up, in my opinion. He needs to talk less. There's no way you can say he's not vocal.
There's a difference in speaking and there's a difference in leading.
He is alpha male. Who led when Oklahoma City was down 25?
Are you sure that he is?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's.
I feel like he would prefer to defer to someone.
No, I disagree wholeheartedly. Look at this run to the playoffs. Look at the 25-point deficit in Game 5. Who brought him back from that? It was Russell Westbrook.
Who's the other option?
That's the problem.
To assume that role.
That's the problem.
While Kevin Durant was on the roster, it was Kevin Durant. I'm going to reference something for you.
You cannot bring in two other alpha males and put him with Russell Westbrook. And that's what you had with Carmelo. That's what you had with Paul George. There was that.
So why did it work in the past?
It didn't work in the past.
They made a run to the finals.
You're telling me Kevin Durant's an alpha male? No stinking way. He's an alpha male.
Kevin
James
Durant
Harden was the
and
sixth
Russell
man.
Westbrook are the same.
No, they're not.
Entity.
They are not. Kevin Durant is not. He's not that guy who's going to lead the charge. Kevin Durant has phantom Twitter accounts so he can back himself up on Twitter. Kevin Durant is a soft. There's a reason why they call him Cupcake. And there's a reason why Kevin would stop. Time out.
I'm going to put you in the timeout.
Because you can't.
Corner's over there.
You cannot compare Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. They're both gifted athletes. They're both gifted basketball players. But what they bring, that personality on the floor, Draymond Green is a whole lot more of a leader on that team than Kevin Durant is. In fact, last week the story broke that Draymond Green was like texting Kevin Durant at 4 a.m. saying, "We need more from you."
Hey, can I just first off give you props for saying Draymond? Because that's how I say it and people make fun of me.
Draymond!
People make fun of me. Specifically, my brother makes fun of me because he thinks it's Draymond. Anywho, here was the citation that I wanted to give you, an incident that played out. So Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook are sitting at a table, microphones in front of them. A reporter explicitly asks Russell Westbrook a question. And you know what happens? Kevin Durant puts his hand out and says, no, don't answer that. Does Russell Westbrook jump in and say, no, he asked me the question. I'm the top dog here, so I'm going to do my thing? No, he doesn't. He bends to Kevin Durant's will, and Kevin Durant answers that question instead.
But that is so far off from taking a leadership role on the basketball floor. That is so far off.
There in point, Russell Westbrook should defer. And the Thunder should look at options.
There's no way. That is the worst example.
Let me ask you this question.
Tell me something.
Let me ask one question.
Okay, and then I want to ask you a question.
Go for it.
Give me an example on the court that makes you. I don't care about a restaurant and in between softball and baseball. Well, my wife was there, we noticed Oklahoma baseball players walking in, right?
Right.
Did we go approach them?
No.
I don't agree with catching somebody. If I'm going to talk to an athlete, I'm going to talk to them at a press conference. I'm going to talk to them in the post game. I don't want to go up to an athlete at the dinner table and say, "Hey, give me your thoughts on this." That is such a terrible example of on the court leadership. I mean, I don't
disagree with you.
I'm embarrassed for you because I need you to give me an example on the court. Tell me something on the court that makes the point you're making with Russell Westbrook.
Man,
I don't think
told
it's there.
You over and over.
It's not there.
It's just attitude.
But that's what he needs, and that's the reason why he
needs a negative attitude all the time.
You only get one.
I'm going to come up and swipe Rudy Gobert.
You only get Raymond Felton hit him in the beans. I'm just saying.
Hey, Russell Westbrook wasn't even involved in that. I get coming to someone's defense.
but
that's just an outpouring of the attitude that was displayed throughout the season.
He is.
I see him complain a lot.
Well,
to refs.
Yeah, and I believe that's why Oklahoma City doesn't get a lot of calls, because how many times? I mean, sometimes he can yell "and one" as he's leaving to make his layup. You know, he probably does that more times in a game than he dishes out assists.
Well,
but
thanks for making my point.
He's a fierce competitor and he's a sore loser, but that describes 90% of the NBA. Just the other week, there was the Houston Rockets had problems in Utah with the fans.
The problem is that the NBA has catered to that attitude. It's catered, I shouldn't say attitude, to those types of reactions and those types of actions. It has catered to those over the years. You have seen things posted on social media about the 90s and how rough of a league it was.
But
that doesn't happen, and that's what I'm saying is they're catering to that type of action and reaction in this current day and age.
The NBA is never going back to what it was in the 90s. And that's shameful, because the 90s was a lot of fun. The late 80s, the Bad Boy Pistons, that was some fun basketball. But here's the thing. Here's the point I'm making. Russell Westbrook is an intimidating guy on the court. And he's intimidating to other guys who come in. Paul George had made no beans about it. This was Russell Westbrook's show. Carmelo Anthony had issues that it was Russell Westbrook's show. That's why Carmelo wants out. That's why Oklahoma City wants rid of him. That's why Paul George is going to leave. He's not going to cohabitate with other stars. But he can win in Oklahoma City if you build a roster around him of supporting guys. I think Steven Adams has the right attitude. I think a guy like Jeremy Grant has the right attitude. Raymond Felton has the right attitude. But you've got to find guys along those lines. Alex Abrinas, Enes Kanter had the right attitude. But you've got to find guys along those lines that are just a little bit better than what you have on your roster now. And my opinion, let Paul George go. Try to figure out if you can buy out Carmelo. Talk to the Houston Rockets and say, hey, we're in on $28 million. Here's what we'll do. We'll pay $18 million if you pay $10 million, and he's yours. Get rid of Carmelo and invest that money in finding role players who are good, but they're not superstars. And I promise you, Russell Westbrook takes him further than the first round of the playoffs. It was his show last year. He was MVP, Mr. Triple-Double, but he did not have that supporting cast that he needed around him. And yeah, they try to do it with superstars, and it's bang or bust right there with the superstars, and it was certainly bust this year. I want to address a couple of things real fast.
I had a question. Go ahead. I had just one question. Is Russell Westbrook the kind of guy who can bring home a championship for Oklahoma City?
Yes. If given, there is that's what I'm saying.
Wait. So you're saying he has to have other superstars to do this?
I'm saying he doesn't need other superstars. He needs role players. Who's the superstar with LeBron James?
Well, for a while there it was Kyrie Irving. Now it's Kevin Love.
And are they doing better or worse without Kyrie Irving?
They're doing worse.
No, you're crazy if you think they're doing worse.
Look at their seeding.
They just swept through the number one seed of the playoffs.
No, but they weren't the number one seed.
It doesn't
Nor
matter.
were they the number two seed.
I mean,
were they the number 3 seed?
But what I'm saying is, does it matter if you sweep the number one seed?
You're asking me how well they're doing without Kyrie. We have one season sample size, and by record, because that's what we have to go by at this point. It's no.
I think right now
Kyrie played for a championship.
I think right now, well, Kyrie helped win a championship.
Kyrie did win it.
But right now, this Cleveland team is playing better than that they did at any point last season in the playoffs. And I'll also raise you that Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving are role players. They're not superstars. They're role player guys. That's what I'm talking about. You need that. You know who Russell Westbrook needs? He needs a Rozier, that guy, the point guard, that's Kyrie Irving's backup, who's just, hey man, I'll need whatever you need me to do. I'm going to do it. Put me on the floor, and next year I know this is Kyrie's team, but I'm here to do what you need me to do. That's what they need. Those caliber guys.
Kyrie Irving is a superstar.
He's not a superstar.
He has his own movie.
Your criteria for your arguments is
All I'm saying is you don't get your own moving without being superstar. That just doesn't name other players who have had a movie. Kevin Durant, Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh my gosh, I can't even.
Michael Jordan.
I can't believe we're going down this road, man.
Matt,
I can't believe this is happening.
The only thing that I'm saying to you is, I'm completely on the other side of the fence from you. And we are not going to agree on this.
No, we're not. Real fast, couple things on Facebook Live. Billy Donovan has to win some games next year. I agree. He's got to win. Billy Donovan has to take this team deeper into the playoffs. But at the end of the day, I think Sam Presti understood the mess wasn't Billy Donovan's mess. It was Sam Presti's mess. That's why they're sticking to him. They're trying to find some continuity. But I do agree next year is a really big year for Billy Donovan. Other comment, Facebook, Scott Stiles says that Russell's going to leave Oklahoma City in 2 years. Strongly disagree. Russell's here unless Oklahoma City trades him. And I don't think that's going to happen. I made my argument there. And then also, I don't know if Russ can share the ball enough. That's the point I'm making. It needs to be his team. He needs to be that guy. The Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets, they're exemptions to the rule. Every other great team has had the one guy. This is the guy. Who's the guy for the Houston Rockets? You'll want to say it's James Harden, right? He's going to be the MVP this year, but
it is James Harden.
But is it not Chris Paul?
No, he's just Chris, a role player.
Well, I don't. That's exactly the point I'm making.
I'm kidding.
Who's the guy? Who's the guy for Golden State? Is it Kevin Durant? Is it Steph Curry? Is it Klay Thompson? Is Draymond Green? I don't know who it is. But what I'm saying is those are exemptions to the rule. Every other team, Boston's kind of in that same mold as Golden State and Houston.
Apparently, it's a recipe for success.
If the attitudes and the personalities are right for that, I'm saying that's not the way it is in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is more like
could be.
No.
You just trade Russell Westbrook.
Oh my! All right, we're done. Let's move on. I can't do this anymore. All right, Sporting News came out with their ranking of the starting quarterbacks this season, 2018 starting quarterbacks from 1 to 130. You have not seen this list unless you looked it up since before we did the podcast prep. No. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
No, not at all. I've not seen this. I have no idea what we're getting into.
So I'm going to ask you, and well, first of all, I have problems with this list all around, but my biggest problem with this list, and by the way, this is going to be a post at heartland-sports.com at some point. No, I'm just going to do the Big 12.
Okay.
The 10 Big 12 quarterbacks. Because here's my problem. For more than half of the league, we can't even name who the starting quarterback is going to be next year. And that includes Oklahoma. Everyone assumes it's going to be Kyler Murray. Mm-hmm. And there's, odds-on favorites, Kyler Murray. But it's not a guarantee. And so I feel like you're taking liberties here if you're the Sporting News. And you kind of have to take liberties if you're going to rank 1 through 130. But there's some assumptions here, and then there's just some things that are outright just crazy. All right, so here we go. Number 1 quarterback in the Big 12, who do you think it is? Because you're going to get this right, I believe.
I do think that they would put Kyler Murray at number 1, but I'm hoping that they're putting Will Grier.
Okay, all right.
Will Grier, undoubtedly the best NFL prospect in the Big 12 next year.
I said the same thing about Mason Rudolph a year ago, and I was totally wrong about that. Okay, Will Grier, they have Will Grier, West Virginia quarterback, the number 1 quarterback in the Big 12. And I agree with that. I have no problems with that. I wholeheartedly agree.
Wait, is he number 1 overall?
I think Will Grier should be consensus preseason all first team Big 12 quarterback. Where do you think the Sporting News has Will Grier ranked at 1 to 130? Where would you put him?
I have no idea. Thinking across the league, across the country, maybe 2 or 3.
Sporting News has him number 1.
Okay, that doesn't surprise me.
It surprises me because I think I do wholeheartedly agree. He's the
Sam Ehlinger up here.
Well, we're going to talk about Sam Ehlinger here in just a minute. Why I wholeheartedly agree, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Is he the number 1 overall quarterback in the country? We got guys like Nick Fitzgerald, kid from Mississippi State, Jake Fromm. the kid from Alabama that no one can pronounce his name, who won the national championship, McSorley from Penn State. Those are all guys that I'd say, hey, Will Greer's a good...
Bryant's coming back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Will Greer's a good quarterback. But the number one overall quarterback in the country, you got to be kidding me, right? But you say you can see it. But now we discussed a little bit.
The thing is that Will Greer has a proven skill set. And I think a lot of weight goes into how well you can throw the deep ball. And that's kind of a specialty for a guy like Greer.
Okay, so in the ballpark with one of the top quarterbacks in the country, agree he's the top Big 12 quarterback going into this fall. Here's where I begin to take issue on several fronts. You want to guess who the number 2 quarterback is ranked by the Sporting News?
In the Big 12? Or
in the Big 12. No, in the Big 12. The fact that I'm taking issue with it tells you it's not Kyler Murray.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to just take a stab in the dark here and say that it is probably Sam Ehlinger.
No, not Sam Ehlinger. Sophomore Charlie Brewer from Baylor, second-ranked quarterback in the Big 12. And again, I can see the argument. I would take a guy like Kyle Kemp from Iowa State. I would take him as the number 2, maybe over Charlie Brewer.
Really?
Yeah, I just feel like, I mean, that kid showed a lot of poise. I watched him firsthand beat Oklahoma and Norman.
Right.
I think if he has adequate tools, he's going to continue to see Iowa State come on a rise this year. I don't think the same thing of Charlie Brewer. He was impressive, but I mean, I'm not buying it. But here's my issue. Not which is Charlie Brewer being number 2. Again, I put Kemp number 2 in the Big 12. Where do you think Charlie Brewer fits in the top 130 of the quarterbacks in the nation? Where do you think they have him ranked overall? Just take a guess here.
I have no idea, man. No idea. It'd be outside of the top 25, but I don't think it'd be outside of 50.
Okay, you're right. So give me a ballpark figure.
I would say his name's not Charlie.
Yeah, it is.
Charlie Kemp?
Oh, no, Kyle Kemp. I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about Charlie Brewer.
Oh, are we?
Yeah, I'm talking about Charlie Brewer. Yeah, that's who they have second.
Okay,
they're ranked number 2 in the Big 12.
I don't know. I would say 42, 41.
Okay, they have him at 32. All right. Now, you've got Will Greer, number 1 overall in the country. Mm-hmm. And then the next Big 12 quarterback you find is at 32. Is there that much difference between Will Greer and the rest of the Big 12?
Maybe it's not there's that much difference. It's just that there are a ton of good prospects out there to put
But
on
you've got list. Here's the problem with the list. You've got Will Greer, number 1 overall, and then 32, 33, 34, 35 are all Big 12 quarterbacks. So what that's telling me is one of 2 things. Number 1 is if that's accurate, then this has always been a quarterback-driven conference. So it's West Virginia, and then everyone else is just along for the ride, according to that stat. The second thing is the Big 12's in a lot of trouble. If your next best quarterback is 32 in a league that's always been driven by the quarterback, there's no way I don't see that. This is a league that's always sent the majority of its teams to a bowl game. That's not going to happen this year. And also, this has been a league that's been it's been ultra competitive. How many years in a row has Bedlam come down to decide the Big 12 champion? And then this year, you have the conference championship. You've got Oklahoma, TCU. People are talking about this. I mean, even though Oklahoma beat TCU and Norman, there's always a chance because this is an ultra competitive conference. Well, if your best quarterback's number 1 and your second best quarterback is a sophomore who's never played a full season of college football, if he's number 2 and he's 31 spots behind or 32 spots behind, there's no competition in this conference this year. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I completely see your argument, but like I said, I'm going to take the flip side of that and just say there's that much talent across the nation, specifically at the quarterback position.
I disagree. The quarterbacks in the Big Ten are terrible. Quarterbacks in the Pac-12 are terrible.
Not all
quarterbacks,
of them.
In general, they are. Quarterbacks in the SEC are terrible. ACC has good quarterbacks.
But you just
Big
mentioned
12 has good quarterbacks.
I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say his name is
I mentioned 1.
Tagovailoa.
Yeah, the kid from Alabama. Yeah.
Tua.
So that's 1 out of 13 or 14.
But here's the thing: is you're mentioning him, and I don't even think he's the starter.
Oh, he's the starter. Yeah. You got
why?
You it's just the Trevor Knight syndrome. I mean, you can't. You cannot go back to Hurts.
Because of one game.
And
not even a full game at that.
Why did Trevor Knight start the next year? Because of what he did in the Sugar Bowl. And yeah, it was a mistake.
Matt, the problem for me, and I don't want to dive down this rabbit hole, but Alabama's not looking for someone who's this electric playmaker on the field. They want someone who can manage the game. And I don't know that that's Tagovailoa at this point in time.
Well,
Can he come along and start before the end of the season like Baker Mayfield will? Possibly.
No.
But I think day one is Jalen Hurts.
No, wait. Jalen Hurts will not even be on this roster opening day. I guarantee it. He will not even be in this program.
Oh, we're going to monitor it.
Yeah.
Not that I'm going to hold you to it, but it'll be a big news story.
Well, I mean, you can hold me to it. I'll be more than happy to jump on there and say, yep, I was wrong about that one. But there's no way you can bring this. There's no way you can burn him a redshirt season. You can bring him into this game, and you can win the national championship and not play him, not start him day one next year. You just cannot do that.
I just want to go back to your argument because you mentioned that there's not many good ones in the SEC. But you're saying he's one. You're saying from?
Give me another one.
Jarrett Stidham?
No.
What about, you mentioned the guy at Mississippi State?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Fitzpatrick, I mean, those are good quarterbacks, but I'm telling you, you're telling me there's not a quarterback in the Big 12 better than those guys?
I don't know that because I don't think we know who the starter is except at West Virginia.
I think Kemp's going to start at Iowa State.
Well, I'll give you that. And I think Baylor, I mean, they've pretty much got their starter.
Okay, so here's who they got. I'm going to go ahead because we're spending a lot of time here. Charlie Brewer at Baylor's number 32. Okay. Kemp, 33. I would swap those, and I still say they're too low. And then you have Sam Ehlinger, 34. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I disagree with that.
And finally, you find Kyler Murray at 35. Problems here for both of these guys is neither one of them has been named the starting quarterback, and I think there's a better chance Kyler Murray starts than Sam Ehlinger starts. Ehlinger's he didn't distance himself.
No.
In the spring.
Michelle.
Yeah, he didn't. And you could make the argument that Kyler Murray didn't distance himself, but you know what? Kyler Murray didn't lose his starting job last year. Sam Ehlinger did. Mm-hmm. And you're able to distance yourself, and then you've got guys like Kevin Rising and Casey Thompson coming in.
It's going to be interesting down in Austin.
Well, for sure. I'm going to throw these other names out here, and you just tell me if you can. I'm just going to throw a name out, and I want you to tell me who they play for. Okay?
Okay.
This is going to be fun. Are you ready? The next, so Kyler Murray is 35 on this list overall, 35. The next time you find a Big 12 quarterback is at the 54th spot, and it's Skylar Thompson. Who does he play for?
Texas Tech.
No. Skylar Thompson is quarterback for the
Kansas. This is going to be embarrassing right here.
Kansas State Wildcats. All right? Not won the starting job, a front runner, but he's on the list. Then you got to go all the way down to 70 to find the next quarterback, and that is the one and only Sean Robinson. Who does Sean Robinson play for?
I feel like I know this name.
You should. Yeah. He former 4-star recruit. He played last year a little bit when Kenny Hill was dinged up.
Oh, thanks. TCU.
Okay. Okay. There you go. Good job, Matt. Okay. So Sean Robinson is at 70. Then you got to go to 77 for the next guy, and that's
Texas Tech.
No, Drew Brown.
Drew Brown. Who have we not even mentioned? Oh, that's Oklahoma State.
Yeah. I got nothing here because I feel like Taylor Cornelius is going to be the starting quarterback at Oklahoma State, and he's not even on the list.
It's all good, man. These are just the way too early. We couldn't think of anything to publish on our website, so here you go.
All right, we're almost done here. All right, so McLean Carter is 97th.
We've already mentioned Baylor, Iowa State, TCU, Texas Tech.
Texas Tech. Now, again, I think the fact that in their spring game, Texas Tech's defense outscored their offense probably has a category of 97th, pretty accurate for the quarterback. I think if this is accurate, which it is, in my opinion, Texas Tech's in a lot of trouble, and so is Cliff Kingsbury. But I've said Cliff Kingsbury has been in trouble for a long time now. All right, final one. Final one on the list.
Kansas.
Yeah, Kansas.
We got that.
Can you name the guy?
No, I can't at all.
All right, you want to guess where they're ranked out of 130 teams?
130?
No, not that low.
I think they would be somewhere in the range of 111, 110.
You're close. 108. Peyton Bender. Peyton Bender is the name of the guy we're talking about. All right, let's move on. Preseason quarterback rankings. I mean, you're right. It's something that you just do to waste space and to get clicks. And clearly, I clicked on this. But we'll have a little bit of a rebuttal coming up. Heartland-sports.com. He's Rich. I'm Matt. Two more things real fast. Spring sports are winding up. Baseball. We talked about this last week. Oklahoma baseball got the much-needed sweep over Kansas State. I said they needed to win 4 of those final 6. Now that they've swept Kansas State, you're going to Orlando this weekend.
You mean of the 9?
No, I'm talking about, conference play. Their last 6 conference games. They're out of conference this weekend in Orlando. I said of those final 6 conference games, they needed to win 4 of 6, but you've got the sweep. Now you gotta say you gotta win 5 of 6, right? I mean, you still gotta take this series at Kansas to close out the season. If you want to go into the Big 12 tournament with a little bit of momentum, right?
Right.
You cannot drop the final series to Kansas. So in order to do that, you gotta win 5 of the last 6, right?
Right.
All right, so that leaves us with the team that's actually in postseason play starting this weekend. Oklahoma, you and I were there Saturday night to watch the Sooners sweep through Oklahoma State, finished at the perfect 18-0 in conference play. First time it's ever been done in program history. Now they go in to the Big 12 tournament, and they are the number 1 seed, rightfully so. Are we going to have a Bedlam finale in the Big 12 championship game?
It's very possible, and you look across the board, and there have been some yearly powers in the Big 12 that haven't shown up in typical fashion. I'm looking really at Baylor. Oklahoma State has gained a lot of ground on the rest of the conference in jumping up into the top 25 throughout the season. They've got Vanessa Shippey, who's won Player of the Week throughout the duration of the season. She is a pretty good player, if I do say so myself. But needless to say, you're looking at the 2 best teams in the conference. That's what we're headed for. Can anything happen in the postseason? Absolutely. I'm not saying it's a lock, but it's highly likely.
Oklahoma's in Pool A. They're sharing that bracket with Texas and Iowa State. Texas with the 4th seed, Iowa State with the 6th seed. Sooners will play Texas in Game 3 of the tournament, and that's going to be around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then they'll turn around and play back-to-back. Sorry, they will not. They'll play Iowa State in Game 6. Same day, just they'll have 2 games in between them. Oklahoma State, they should have bracket with Baylor and Texas Tech. Oklahoma State actually plays in the first game. They get things kicked off at 11 a.m. On Friday. When you look at Texas and Iowa State in that bracket and Pool A with Oklahoma, do either one of those teams scare you, and why?
I don't know that any team scares me, but I will say, just for the sheer fact that it is a rivalry, I know that it typically pulls out the best of each team. And we saw Texas really challenged Oklahoma during the regular season. We know that Oklahoma had I think 2 come from behind wins in that series. So I think Texas can challenge them. I think they can pressure them. Do I think that they can win? Not necessarily, but if I'm looking and I'm pegging out of those 2, Iowa State and Texas is the one that gives Oklahoma more problems.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Oklahoma, they hosted both in Norman. They outscored Iowa State 26-7 in that 3-game series. But also with Texas, here's why Texas would bother me a little bit, because Texas, that series included Oklahoma with a 6-0 run rule game. No, sorry, it wasn't a run rule. It was just a shutout. 6-0 game. Also had a game that they had to win in extra innings. So you just don't know. And you're right. Because of the rivalry, because it's Texas, but I say hands down Oklahoma comes out of their bracket.
Yeah, and what's crazy is I just pulled up not the bracket here, but the standings, and Texas is on a 7-game losing streak in conference play. They're going to need to turn things around if they really want to challenge Oklahoma, who's looking at making a run to the Women's College World Series and potentially a third championship.
But how do you turn that around? You beat the top team in the conference. It could happen.
It's true.
We'll be back next week. We're going to talk more about, hopefully this time next week, we should know. There's no way, in my opinion, there's no way Oklahoma does not host a regional. Are you agreed on that?
At this point, I don't see how they don't host a super regional.
Right.
I mean, they're most likely going to be the 2 or the 3 seed in the tournament.
I can see them being even down to the 4 seed in the tournament. I think there's an argument out there for Oregon. I think there's an argument.
I had Oregon at 2.
Yeah. So
Oklahoma at 3.
I
don't see 4 though.
I just think there's a chance. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think they're for sure top 4, which puts them in a super regional bracket, but you got to win the regional. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but hopefully we'll be able to talk about that a little bit next week.
It's going to depend on how things fall with these. Oregon and UCLA are 1 and 2 in the rankings, so it's going to depend on how that shakes out.
Who's 4?
4 is Florida.
Man, Florida's always good, I like Coach Walker.
But of the top 4 teams, Florida has the most losses.
All right, but they're always good, man. They are always good.
They are.
All right, he's Rich. I'm Matt. Heartland-sports.com is where you can catch us. Heartland-sports.com. Also on Twitter. We're on Twitter at SportsHeartland. At SportsHeartland on Twitter. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure if you're catching us on the website, catch us on TalkShoe. Participate by leaving some comments. Tell Richard how crazy he is about the Thunder needing to...
Or,
just telling he's crazy about the Thunder needing to trade. Neither are you.
So?
That's all right.
That's my argument against you.
Until next week, good show.
Don't turn it on me.
See you guys later. Take care. Boomer.